What's up guys, it's SweViver, welcome back. Finally I'm here again. I got stuck in the virtual reality for a while, I'm sorry for this. It was Christmas yesterday, now it's April, I don't know what happened, but I'm sorry for the little delay that I caused. Anyway, I hope you missed me and I can promise you I'm gonna be back now. I'm gonna do a lot of cool videos and I hope you're gonna enjoy them. And today as a premiere, I decided I'm gonna talk a little bit about this unit. I know, there's been so much talk about Pimax and I know everyone is excited about the Valve Index headset, but before then, it's almost 2 months from now before we can see that Valve headset. So for now, I'm gonna have a look at the Pimax 5K XR or the 5K Business Edition, it's called as well. Guys, I hope you're gonna enjoy this video. Join me. Before we start off, a big thanks to all my lovely Patreon supporters and a special thanks to all my 3 official sponsors on Patreon: Commander Darklight, Art Armin and VR Ambassador. The Pimax 5K XR is the new and recently announced 3rd edition of the Pimax range of wide field of view virtual reality headsets with high resolution image, which already was announced not long after the successful Pimax Kickstarter campaign back in late 2017. Same as for the previous Pimax headsets, the 5K XR gives you 170 degrees of horizontal field of view, covering almost your entire vision in VR. Pimax is still yet today the only company with a consumer-grade virtual reality headset offering true VR immersion without a tunnel vision and a half-baked experience found in other VR headset brands. Well, isn't that a bit strange? Okay, so the model name XR stands for Extended Range, as refers to, as far as I know, the extended dynamic range, including improvements regarding additional depth of colors, higher contrast and deeper black levels by using 2 high-definition, high-quality OLED displays instead of LCD panels. The 5K XR was previously called 5K BE or the Business Edition, but to not confuse home consumers and probably also to attract a high-end gaming enthusiast, Pimax recently decided to go with the name Extended Range instead. Well, fair enough. At a first glance, the 5K XR is basically identical to the 5K Plus and the 8K, with the same form factor and design, the same dimensions and more or less the same weight and look. The unit is also equipped with the same wide field of view Fresnel lenses and mechanical IPD adjustment wheel and identical cables and accessories included in the box. During the unboxing, I really had a hard time to identify this XR model from the previous Pimax headsets until I found a small blue logo on the front side on the left side which says BE. I know this might sound confusing, but the thing is, the early unit I received from the Pimax team for testing and review was manufactured long before the name change took place, and today, upon making an order of the XR, I guess you can expect all upcoming batches of the 5K XR leaving the factory with an XR logo instead. Anyways, the OLED panels are basically the only thing that differs the 5K XR from the previous wide field of view headsets such as 5K and the 8K, which were both equipped with 2 high resolution and low persistence LCD panels. The 8K uses 2 full-sized 4K LCD panels with an internal upscaler converting the input signal from 4040p to 4K resolution, while the 5K Plus uses 2 full-sized 1440p LCD screens rendering a full native resolution. Now, the new 5K XR is charged with 2 full-sized 1440p OLED panels manufactured by Samsung. In other words, the same resolution is used and rendered as with the 5K Plus, but with all the advantages and maybe also disadvantages of what the OLED technology can give us today. By the way, if you want to learn more about the previous Pimax 5K Plus and the 8K headsets, make sure to check out my almost 3-hour long in-depth Pimax review and many other videos I've made in the past. You can also expect a lot of new videos coming up, including a full review of this new 5K XR unit with a much deeper analysis full of tests, comparisons and my final conclusions. So make sure to subscribe now and hit that like button and the bell button. Thanks. So while the panels of the 5K XR are obviously the big news here, I'll try to keep the 5K XR first look video rather limited, touching only the important factors, which is mainly about the OLED panel image quality and technology, the improvements and also maybe the downsides of it. My results are based on 2 weeks of testing, including comparisons of black levels, color reproduction, panel resolution and screen door effect with other headsets, as well as some other interesting aspects. I will actually leave out a lot of the geeky in-depth analysis and complicated stuff for the full 5K XR review and the follow-up videos coming up next. Even though I love to completely geek out on the high-end technology by analyzing it down to atomic levels and make 3-hour long reviews, after all, this is a first look video, right? So let's get to the point now, shall we? Pimax is promising us deeper blacks, higher contrast levels, richer and more popping colors, and a more refined experience with the XR headsets thanks to the OLED panels, right? While I do agree that the OLED technology developed by Samsung has a clear advantage and takes the edge over the LCD panels in many ways, I gotta say this VR headset is not for everyone, and because of some specific factors you might actually even prefer to skip the 5K XR and keep your existing 5K Plus or the 8K device. We are all different after all, and what's better for me might not always be better for you, of course. First off, let's describe my first impression and my first thoughts. Immediately after powering up the Pimax 5K XR to my gaming PC, starting up the latest version of Untitled software and then jumping into Steam VR, I got instantly excited. Actually, my heartbeat probably also took a good hit at that moment. Let me tell you, the colors, the blacks, the contrast, it's all the time and wide field of view. Well, by just looking at the Steam VR dashboard environment, browsing through the list of VR games, I could instantly tell the image had stepped up the game with a way richer and more popping color palette. Seriously, the high contrast between dark and bright objects and part of the view makes my eyes to kind of smile back at the OLED screens now. Whites are pure white now and very bright, and at the same time the blacks are just black as expected. Now also add the fact that I'm actually looking through a 170-degree field of view headset, seeing a rather high resolution image through the whole screen, and you can probably imagine the overwhelming feeling at that moment. Well, let me just point out that I've been using my Pimax 5K Plus and the 8K for more than 6 months now, and the fact that I've never found the image in those two headsets being bad or underwhelming at all. The Pimax low persistence LCD panels are great indeed, and while the 5K Plus has always been my favorite to-go headset for VR gaming, I must admit that the 8K has recently really improved in terms of image quality thanks to the latest firmware and software updates, which I will cover in other videos. But still, what the 5K Plus and the 8K was missing and could not really achieve because of the limitations of the LCD panels was the true blacks in semi-dark and pitch black VR environments in games or movies. And sometimes also the contrast ratio between bright and dark objects, which to some degree could make the image feel slightly dull or even washed out in specific scenes or experiences. Personally, I was never really bothered about the less vivid colors using the Pimax with LCD screens compared to the Samsung Odyssey, for example, but I can admit now that the OLED screens on the XR now makes a noticeable difference here as well.
Oh!
So the first game I fired up was Paranormal Activity, a very dark and creepy horror game which was never really satisfying to my eyes in any VR headset with the LCD panels such as the 5K Plus and the 8K. Now using the 5K XR with the OLED panels and of course with the wide field of view, I finally feel I can resume my gameplay which I saved more than a year ago and never got back to until now. The pitch black surroundings outside of the house, the creepy shadows in every corner, the dark rooms, everything just feels right now. Sure, I know I had basically the same blacks around me while playing the game on the Samsung Odyssey and the HTC Vive for that matter, but wide field of view gives you that extra awareness. I've told you that many times, that presence and the immersion which no other VR headset currently can match with the Pimax range. And so goes for all the other dark VR games and simulators such as Carnage Chronicles, Hellblade, Alone, Primordial, Elite Dangerous, Contagious Outbreak, and even Skyrim VR down in the deep dark caves and dungeons looks a lot better now. The image is outstanding with vivid and rich colors and lovely blacks. Lucky's Tale has never been so colorful and enjoyable before. The reds, the oranges, the greens and blues are simply popping out of the screen. Now this reminds me of playing it on the Samsung Odyssey of course, but again this time I'm seeing all this in a much wider field of view that takes the immersion to another level. While watching movies in VR, the black levels are even more important than the colors to get the immersion of actually sitting in a movie theater, besides the movie image quality itself of course, and with the Pimax 5K XR, using the wide field of view gives you a good awareness of your surroundings in the cinema, and having the surrounding pitch black definitely improves the experience. This was something that could actually bother me when I was watching a movie, especially on the Pimax 5K Plus, where the whole view around the movie screen was dark grayish rather than black. I gotta say, watching movies is now a blast in VR. The dark scenes looks indeed better than in my living room TV even. The colors and the shades are simply outstanding, despite the darkest grays being a bit crushed with blacks, which I will get back to a little bit later in this video. Either way, I can tell you, when I recently watched Bohemian Rhapsody on the 5K XR, I realized this was by far the best movie experience I've ever had in VR. To sum up my first impression of the OLED panels, I would like to say it's a nice improvement. At first you get overwhelmed by the colors, contrast and the great blacks. After a few sessions you somehow get used to it and start to take it for granted. But the problem comes when going back or switching back to LCD panels again. And while I got used to the OLEDs pretty fast, it took me at least a double or triple amount of time to get used to the less dynamic LCD image on my 5K Plus and the 8K. And now you may be shouting out,
"But hey Martin, have you missed the latest Pi Tool update?"
Well, no guys, I'm fully aware of the latest Pi Tool update, which introduces brightness and contrast adjustments on software level in Pi Tool itself for the 5K Plus and the 8K headset. It does indeed give a massive improvement for the LCD panel headsets. It really does, and this is in my opinion one of the biggest and best updates made by the Pimax so far. Blacks are better, colors are much better, and the contrast overall is more dynamic like never before, just by adjusting contrast and brightness sliders in Pi Tool. By the way, I'm already working on a separate video coming soon about these features. But I must disappoint you here by saying that even the lowest possible brightness adjustment on the 5K Plus or the 8K will not bring the blacks to the OLED comparable levels which the 5K XR has, unfortunately not even close. How about I will just show you some comparisons with some through the lens photos between the XR OLED panel at default brightness values versus the Pimax 5K Plus with heavily decreased brightness. In Elite Dangerous, where your surroundings are mostly very dark in space, the difference is obvious. On default brightness Pi Tool values, the XR outshines the 5K Plus with much better blacks and more contrast. Also the colors are more vivid, I would say. Reducing the brightness to -2 or even -4 gives the 5K Plus a whole new level of darkness, but it's never on par with the XR. The LCD backlight is still there, a whole lot less, but it's still there. Also, reducing the brightness in Pi tool to -4 also crushes a lot of the details in the dark, which you can partially solve by bringing up the contrast to value +2 for example, but it's still not compatible with the OLED blacks and contrast. And same goes for the darker environments in Skyrim VR and especially paranormal activity. There are even darker games than this, such as the VR horror game Alone. Most of the time you're simply running around in a pitch black house with only a flashlight in your hand. Well, on the 5K Plus the game was not really the optimal VR experience. Here on the Pimax 5K XR it's simply super dark, atmospheric and more realistic. So yeah, the OLED blacks are indeed giving new life to the Pimax headset paired with the existing wide field of view and high resolution. But remember I told you some people might actually prefer to stick with the 5K Plus or the 8K? Well, even the sun has its dark spots, as we used to say in Sweden. The advantages of using OLED panels on the 5K XR unfortunately also introduces some disadvantages and flaws at the same time, and while I will go much more in depth on this topic in the full 5K XR review coming up, I think it's a good idea to let you know about it already now. The first problem is that you could potentially see OLED black smear. The so-called black smear or smearing effect can be described as minor ghosting of dark objects and dark parts of the image. This is related to the current OLED panel technology, and in short terms the pixel response time on current OLED panels is not fast enough to turn the pixels on and off in time. From let's say completely black to grey or completely black to white and the other way around. This could be described as a slight lag or delay in movement of dark objects or parts of the image compared to the brighter object or parts in the VR view, such as dark shadows for example. The black smear could be seen only by looking at moving objects or while moving your head in any direction in VR or by moving in the VR space artificially or with your body. If you have a Samsung Odyssey VR headset, I'm sure you have seen this already, as Samsung has still today not managed to solve this issue with their Samsung Odyssey headsets, including the new Odyssey Plus. Now, during the 2 weeks I have tested the 5K XR OLED headset and reported my thoughts, the Pimax team has actually solved the black smear issue almost completely within the Pi tool software. This was made the similar way as the Oculus fixed the black smear on the Oculus Rift headset, simply by never turning off the pixels completely. Now this way we get rid of the black smear, but the pixel never turns completely black, which simply decreases the black levels of course. I would say most of the people though will never notice this, and personally I would like to be able to have this option in Pi tool software instead, to manually switch between deepest black levels with some black smear or slightly less deep blacks but no black smear. I have forwarded this idea to Pimax team and hopefully they will add it soon. The second disadvantage of the OLED panels on the Pimax 5K XR is the slight black crush, which is also related to the current OLED technology, well, at least until Samsung brings better and improved OLED panels. This problem is easily detected in today's OLED TVs as well. In general, OLED panel has great blacks, contrast and colors, but the dynamic range of gray shades or grayscale is worse. The shadow details are a bit more limited than on the LCD panels. This means you will lose some details in dark or very dark parts of the image. Something that's supposed to be very dark renders as completely black on the OLED panel. That's simply black crush. As an example, looking at a dark chair or a desk in a very dark corner of a room which is almost completely dark, you will still see the desk or chair using the LCD panel, but meanwhile on the OLED panel the desk completely blends together with the pitch black corner or the background itself and becomes invisible for the eye. This might be a problem to some people while playing extremely dark games such as VR horror experiences, and the main menu of the Paranormal Activity VR is a great example of OLED black crush. Once again, I will go more in depth on this in the full review, but I doubt there is any solution for this other than simply adding more brightness to the rendered image, which will of course destroy the black levels a bit. Another concerning thing about the Pimax 5K XR OLED panels is the pentile pixel matrix introducing more screen door effect than the LCD panels of the 5K Plus and the 8K does. I do not bother so much about it, as I find the screen door effect to be pretty good and well enough for my needs on the 5K XR, but I know there are some people that might find this as a deal breaker, especially people who play flight simulators or racing simulators on a daily basis, where reading gauges or tiny text and looking at far distance optimally requires as little screen door effect as possible. We're all individuals and different human beings, of course, and while some of us do not even see or bother about the screen door effect, others could get instantly put off by the constantly visible or detectable pixel pattern across the screens. And yes, the XR OLED panels has noticeably worse screen door effect, with a worse fill rate or gap between the pixels and sucked pixels compared to the 5K Plus and the 8K LCD panels. So while the 5K Plus and the 5K XR really has the same panel resolution of full-size 1440p panels, this could give you the impression that the actual panel resolution or game resolution is lower. And especially when looking at objects or environments with red or orange colors such as skin tones, the screen door effect, or in other words the space between each subpixel, is more apparent. The reason for this is that the XR OLED panels made by Samsung are made with a diamond pixel pentile matrix, which has 4 subpixels for each pixel, 2 green subpixels, 1 red and 1 blue. This way there are more green subpixels than red and blue subpixels, and the gap between red as well as the blue subpixels is larger. In other words, a slightly worse fill rate. The macro mode through the lens shot I took on the XR panels here clearly shows the pixel matrix pattern and its individual subpixels. I hope this makes sense as well.
Oh no, SweViver is getting super geeky again.
I know, guys, this is getting way too complicated now, especially for a first look hands-on video, so I will leave out the details for this time and I will go much further into this topic in my full review of the Pimax 5K XR, because I'm actually sure a lot of you VR enthusiasts and geeks like me want to go deeper into this topic. Anyway, now I want to give you a few examples how good or maybe how bad the screen door effect looks like on the 5K XR compared to the Pimax 5K Plus and the Pimax 8K as a reference. Now have in mind several of the through the lens photos here are taken with the macro mode on a DSLR camera, showing only a very small portion of the whole VR view you're seeing in your headset. And don't panic, it's not as bad in reality as it looks in these photos. This is DSLR macro photos taken with a Canon 6D full frame camera and a professional Canon L series lens. And just out of fun, I will include some shots taken of the Samsung Odyssey VR headset, which uses the same OLED panels as the Vive Pro and which are already superior to the Oculus Rift panels anyway. Now I know what you're thinking, and I agree, the Pimax 5K XR panels have indeed very noticeable screen door effect despite its full-sized 1440p panels for each eye. It may be even slightly worse than the Samsung Odyssey, but that's apparently the cost of using wide field of view and the biggest downside of using OLED panels with pentile pixel matrix. OLED panels with RGB matrix might solve this issue, of course, the day they get affordable to add in a reasonably priced VR headset. But for now, it looks like we have to choose between the OLED or the LCD, and both of the panels has its downsides. You either take wonderful pure OLED blacks but more screen door effect, or grayish LCD blacks but with less screen door effect. Another topic I would like to briefly talk about in this video, which is not necessarily a problem at all, is the panel refresh rate of the 5K XR. While the 5K Plus runs in 90Hz and the Pimax 8K has a maximum refresh rate of 80Hz or 80 frames per second, the XR OLED panels on the other hand are clocked to 82Hz. It might sound a bit odd as we usually see 60Hz, 70, 72, 80 or 90Hz displays in other headsets. Well, the reason Pimax decided to go with 82Hz is for me still unknown, but I must say that personally I cannot see any difference whatsoever between the 80, 82 or 90Hz, neither in games, watching movies or just staring at a clear white wall in VR. I see no flicker at all at 82, it's not giving me any eye strain or visual abnormalities while moving around. I have no reason to believe you will have any of these problems either. But of course, once again, we're all different and some people might be more sensitive to refresh rates below the previously standard 90Hz, so have that in mind. However, speaking of standard refresh rate values, I'm not really sure if 90Hz is the standard anymore. Looking at the Oculus Go, the upcoming Oculus Quest, the Oculus Rift S and some other headsets, it seems like 72 or 80Hz is the new 90, right? As I already pointed out many times before, a lower maximum refresh rate could also be an advantage for you, as your GPU needs to render 82 frames per second to get a fully smooth experience instead of 90 frames per second, which means a more stable frame rate in games or simulators and of course a slightly lower GPU requirement. By the way, you're probably aware of the fact that all current Pimax wide field of view headsets, including this new 5K XR, has the ability to run in lower panel refresh rates as well, 64Hz and 72Hz beside the maximum value the panel can handle. Other refresh rates values might be also added soon in future PyTool updates. This setting is available already through software in the PyTool versions, so if you really want to save up for performance and would like to play your games with smoother frame rate, you can always change the refresh rate to 64 or 72Hz, well, as long as your eyes can handle it without flicker and any side effects. I know many VR simulator enthusiasts are currently running 64Hz mode on the Pimax and they're happier than ever thanks to this smoother experience. But I will dig deeper into this topic as well in my upcoming Pimax related videos. And lastly, the Pimax 5K XR price. The 5K XR headset is currently priced at $899 plus shipping. This is for the headset alone, of course. Using my exclusive affiliate link in the video description down here below or in my first comment in this video, you will get $50 off promo code on each order, which means $849 for the headset plus shipping. At the same time, you will also support me and my channel SweViver, as I'll get a small revenue for each referral. The Pimax 8K with the dual 4K LCD panels and the upscale costs exactly the same. If you go for the 5K Plus, you will save another $200, as the current order price for the 5K Plus is $699 or $649 with my promo code. Also, these three Pimax headsets are more or less identical in every aspect and specification except for the different display panels and resolutions used in each of them. You may or may not like this and you may think this is expensive, and that's totally up to you, of course. And no, you do not need to pay any import charges. The headsets are sent by Pimax locally within Europe, United States and other continents. If you ask me, there is currently no other VR headset brand on the market with specifications and customizations even comparable with Pimax. At this point, we don't even know how much the Valve Index will cost, and even if I am really excited about the Valve announcement, I'm not sure if the 135 degrees field of view, which is by the way a rumor still, really can match the field of view of Pimax. The dramatically wider field of view of up to 170 degrees horizontally is amazing and changes VR forever. Once you try it, it's difficult to go back to the tunnel vision with other headsets, and no ultra high definition panel can change that fact. By the way, if you want to play room scale games with full tracking, then the additional HTC lighthouses or base stations are needed, at least one of them. And of course a pair of Vive controllers, or maybe the Valve Index Knuckles coming soon. But if you only play flight simulators though, and if you're only watching movies in VR, you can enjoy the Pimax headset without these accessories by just using the built-in Pimax headset tracking instead. All in all, I think the Pimax 5K XR is a great addition in the Pimax lineup. From the 2 weeks of hardcore testing the 5K XR, I can tell you that the OLED panels are a very welcome step up from the 8K and the 5K Plus in terms of color reproduction, contrast range, black levels and overall immersion thanks to the deeper blacks in dark environments. Yes, there are some downsides of course, especially the more apparent and visible screen door effect, so it all depends on what you value the most. If you often play dark games, horror games, adventure games, dungeon crawlers or watch movies in VR, then the 5K XR is a winner hands down. On the other hand, if you play all day long some flight or racing simulators, you might actually appreciate the better screen door effect on the 5K Plus and the 8K after all. The 5K XR is like a licorice candy, I would say. Some will love it, some will hate it. Lastly, I will repeat myself again and tell you that my full in-depth review of this Pimax 5K XR headset is coming soon here on SweViver, which will be much more in-depth and covering basically everything you need to know about this VR headset from A to Z. Until then, I have lots of upcoming topics in progress for my next videos, such as the new Pimax fixed FOV rendering already available right now, the brain warp, motion reprojection, new performance boost, benchmarks, tests, gameplays and much more. So make sure to subscribe now, and if you want to know more about the Pimax headsets already now, check out my previous videos if you still haven't. And guys, what do you think about the Pimax 5K XR or the former BE Business Edition with OLED panels? Well, is this a competitor to the Valve Index headset coming out in about 2 months from now? Well, let me know in the comments down here below. I'm really curious to know your thoughts. And I also hope that you enjoyed this first video, my little premiere, like a comeback after a break for more than 3 months. Is this like almost 4 months now? I know it's bad, but I will stop talking about it now. Now let's just focus on the cool and fun stuff with virtual reality. Guys, big thanks for your support, big thanks to all my supporters, all my subscribers, and a huge thanks to all my Patreon supporters of course, and a special thanks to my official sponsors on Patreon, Commander Darklight, Art Armin and VR Ambassador. I really appreciate your continuous support. Guys, see you in the next one. Stay tuned. Cheers.